and welcome to Conversations on Sex, Addiction, and Relationships. I'm Wendy Conquest, and I'm here with Dan Drake and Tim Stein, and we are so happy to be with you today. Today we're going to talk about psychedelics and specifically psilocybin. And so we have a guest whose name is Dan Such, and he is a psilocybin coach. And so he's going to talk to us a lot about this this dynamic. I'm in Colorado, so we recently passed laws decriminalizing magic mushrooms, as they're called, psilocybin properly. And so at the end of this year, we're also going to approve healing centers where health professionals can administer psilocybin to clients. And so this is I think a big deal in our country, in our culture at the time. But what do you guys what do you think about this?
I'm really excited about this topic. I've been hearing, I don't know about you guys, but when I went to school, there were zero conversations about any kind of, psilocybin use, or at least that I remember, any conversations about the use of this for healing and treating trauma or other issues. I heard about like ayahuasca, I heard about other things, but I knew very little, but yet it feels like there's been a ton of push lately for exploration. I know MDMA was recently doing a lot of studies to see its effectiveness for healing. So I'm just really excited to have Dan, have an expert, talk to us about kind of what it is and how it's used, and just get some more information.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm really looking forward to this. I've heard a lot of really interesting uh, results from people who have combined ketamine, psilocybin, MDMA, that kind of work, ayahuasca, with trauma healing, and have had some pretty profound results. I've been wanting to look into it and see what benefits it might bring to my clients. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation to find out more about it.
Mhm. Sounds good. Dan, why don't you join us? There he is.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Yeah, absolutely. So, Dan, tell us what you do.
Well, I'm a psilocybin facilitator slash consult. So I have a lot of experience working at psilocybin retreat centers, um, really overseas in the countries where it is legal to do so. And I also do consulting online. So it could be anything from somebody who has, say, gone on a retreat and needs additional integration support, or has general questions, curiosities, um, preparation beforehand, before they go to a retreat center, and things like that. Any and all things psilocybin, really.
I'm
Okay.
assuming that from our perspective, the use of psilocybin and its benefit is primarily in trauma healing. Is that what most people are going to the retreat centers for? Is it to use psilocybin for trauma healing, or are there other benefits to it, or other things that people are using it to take care of or address?
I would say it's primarily to work through trauma, but really anything that falls under the umbrella of neuroplasticity. So somebody who is in a big life transition and wants to be in a enhanced state of adaptiveness, or maybe they want to quit a habit such as smoking or vaping or something like that. Uh, really, anything that falls under the category of big change. And for a lot of people, that means working through large amounts of trauma in a short period of time.
So can I ask this just a really basic question
Sure.
to start us out? What is psilocybin and how the heck does it work?
Oh, well, yeah, I can do my best to explain that. It's, it is a compound found in the psilocybe genus of mushrooms primarily, and it is a compound that is actually very close to DMT. To actually call psilocybin naturally occurring orally active DMT is pretty technically correct.
What is
And
DMT?
DMT is another profoundly potent psychedelic.
Okay.
And what's interesting about DMT is it is made in our own brain. So we have DMT already cycling within us, and people have found that large amounts of DMT are released and death actually. So it's been called. There's a book called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and it's sort of the last molecule between physical reality and the non-physical reality, I guess.
So
So,
psilocybin is a naturally occurring chemical that's very similar to DMT.
Yeah.
And we have any idea what it does that helps with whatever these large transitions are?
There's still so much to be discovered with this compound. We know it works on the 2A receptor. It's very closely related to serotonin. Um, some people will call it a serotonin analog or something like that. And it induces a large amount of neuroplasticity within the nervous system, which has a large potential for many types of benefits. Uh, and there's not very many things that we can do to achieve that level of neuroplasticity, at least things we haven't discovered yet.
and for our listeners, so my understanding is that we used to think that our brains at the ages of about 3 were fully developed. And then we thought, oh, actually it's not at 3, it's when we're adults. So when we're adults, the brain you have is the brain you have. And so now research has shown that actually our brains are able to change in a lot of different ways. This is that term it's malleable. It can change with the right circumstances. And so this is what we mean by neuroplasticity. Did I represent that accurately?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. So what I hear you saying, Dan, is that with psilocybin, it helps the brain rewire or change in constructive ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm hearing a lot of people. So you talk about retreat centers, and I'd be curious what happens specifically. I'm sure it varies by center, but what might happen in an environment like that? A lot of people I'm hearing talking about microdosing. So I'm sure there's different ways to do this, but can you just help us understand a little bit more of the kind of nuances of how this works and kind of what the differences might be and how they affect your brain?
The differences
Like
between
microdosing or going to, I assume at a retreat center, it's not just gonna be microdosing, you're gonna have a full experience of some kind. So I was just curious kind of what the difference would be, what the outcomes might be, and how you'd expect what the differences to be.
Yeah. So in most cases, from what I understand, the people that are going to call off a week of work, travel somewhere, they're going for the macro dose a lot of the time. And it's like a lot of the psychedelics, it is profoundly different depending on the size of the dose. So the the macro dose is really what's going to bring about a heavy state of neuroplasticity, major rewiring, massive releases in trauma, revelations, and then the mystical experience that we've heard so much about. Where microdosing, uh, personally, I almost see it as sort of a a supplement of sorts. It is something that we can infer is very healthy for the nervous system and would serve as a good augment to practices that people may already have, such as therapy, yoga, meditation, and things like that. But in terms of actually getting big movement on the emotional slash spiritual front, it's it's almost like you you need a certain amount of it. You need something that would qualify to the individual as a macro dose, sort of like how you would use Drano. You use the cap full. You don't put a one drop of Drano in the drain each day to fix your sink. So it's sort of like that. That's an oversimplified way of putting it.
Did that kind of answer your question, Dan?
Yeah, I'm just because I know, I mean, I know of it. I know, and I know what I've been told, or like what they say and talk about, well, the psychedelics and can stay bouncing around in your synapses and you could have a bad trip and it could hit you 20 years. That's what I've heard about some of psychedelics. Maybe that's LSD. I'm not sure the difference between, what an LSD bad trip might be versus psilocybin. And, I'm a noob here. So just trying to learn the new uniquenesses, because it's been exciting. The people that I've seen use these treatments, and I'm sorry, but I'm lumping in, ketamine or MDMA or other things avenues that they've added. When I do EMDR trauma work, I get to a certain point, but I've just seen when people use some of these, it's just kind of expanded the work that I've done, and then the healing seems to take almost like exponential growth. It's just been really remarkable to see. And so I'd love to learn more, because clearly I want to help my clients, get the healing that they're deserving and wanting. So anyway, just curious.
Yeah, well, and just to piggyback on that, so I looked up different articles on psilocybin, and what's really been in the news is women, or specifically moms, microdosing on mushrooms. So in 2023, August 2023, ABC News put out an article. Mom says microdosing mushrooms makes her a present, quote unquote, parent. The Wall Street Journal in February 2024 came out with an article, The Working Mom's Newest Life Hack, Magic Mushrooms. And then I think Oprah also came out with an article or an interview about it. So this is definitely in mainstream news, but more about the microdosing rather than macrodosing and having a real therapeutic sort of life-changing event.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan, what do you make of this?
Yeah, very interesting article, and I can only infer the logic behind this. And it is sort of daunting to hear at first, right? So you don't want to macro dose really any of these substances and then watch your child, right? So why would it make sense that you could take a little bit of something and then it's good somehow? But that is how it speaks to how potent these substances are, even at such micro levels. And I would think that maybe the logic behind it is that psilocybin does bring you into a parasympathetic state. And, maybe we have the image in our head that we want the mother watching a child to be caffeinated up, super vigilant and all of this sort of stuff going on. But maybe that's missing the subtleties even. Maybe we can be too sympathetic to the point of not to missing out on the details, and maybe not being so present with the kid. So with the microdosing, I could see how maybe that is what these mothers are experiencing, just the slowing down, but not being disoriented or incapacitated, but really just more of that rest and digest, really being in the moment, feeling, rather than, you know, technically watching the kid, but really worrying about a lot of other things, and having anxiety blind somebody to the subtler details.
So how does this process work? I assume it's not show up at your therapist's office and have them give you a bag of mushrooms and go home and take them and everything's better. Um, I'm assuming that there's like a process of walking people through and containing and guiding and being supportive. What if somebody was going to go to a retreat center and they were going to do some of this work, what would the general process look like?
Um, well, that would start with the intake and screening process, making sure that this person qualifies through their medical history, and is physically fit for the experience, and as well as mentally equipped. Has this person done any therapy? What is their general relationship to their emotions? Um, just because this
Yeah.
is the big leagues in a lot of ways, and you don't want somebody's first encounter with deeply rooted trauma to be in the most extreme way possible, right? So
Mhm.
we do look for people that are already on a journey in some way, shape, or form. And then during that, uh, we checked if they have SSRIs, medications that they're on, physically fit, already sort of educated on the therapeutic process, at least generally. And after that, it is uh, preparation, and that is everything from just preparing for what they may feel physically, um, going through any expectations that they may have, and ironing that out, um, educating people on the safety of the medicine, so that they don't have to come in with the apprehension that they may be damaged somehow from this experience. All in the effort so that they can come into this experience um, with the normal amount of nervousness, and
Mhm.
it's more rooted around the trauma they're going to encounter, rather than, am I going to be okay after this? um so the preparation is around the guest feeling comfortable with what they're doing, and fully educated to the extent that they feel safe. And then after that, moving into intentionality. What is it actually that they want to work through with this experience, and what that may or may not look like for them as they journey?
Is this a one-to-one prep process? Is it a group typically? How does this generally go down?
Uh, it could really go either way.
Okay.
It depends on what this person has signed up for.
I just, Dan, just with the experience I have, some people really prefer, client-wise, prefer to be one-on-one, and some people like to be in a group process.
So it's client specific how they kind of want the experience to go.
I think a lot of times, I mean, but my thought is if there's a psilocybin coach in a remote area, and that there's no choice to do a group, to come together as a group, then it's just one-on-one. I don't know. Dan, what weigh in on this?
Yeah. So people may consult with me and want proper preparation with somebody experienced, and then I I don't know what their situation is, but I can infer it's sort of implicit that they have some sort of a one-on-one situation coming. Um, Maybe that's something that they signed up for. They're going to the Johns Hopkins study, and they want to just be as prepared as possible for that experience. Um, but a lot of the retreat centers that are in South America the Caribbean, things like that. It's very, very evident what they're signing up for, and they want sort of that group experience. And a lot of people find that helpful because you're not only getting the benefit of having your own questions answered, but there's questions that other people think of that you might not have thought of, and you get to hear the answers to those questions as well.
So that's in the preparation phase when you're actually taking the psilocybin and you're going through your own psilocybin experience. Is that in a group, or is that like more of an individual experience with a coach who's sort of like keeping an eye on you, or what's that experience usually like?
Yeah, gotcha. So with the group retreats, if everybody prepares together, very more than likely they're going to be journeying together as well. Um, with the staffing of that being something pretty close to a 1-to-1 ratio. Um, and that's something that should be pretty standard. You know, if somebody were to look for a retreat center that they were interested in embarking on one of these journeys, that's probably the first thing I would recommend to somebody is look at the staff to guest ratio, um, which will say a lot about, how well equipped they are.
Can
Dan, you just said something that kind of brought this thought to mind. So I have heard of retreat centers that are doing psychedelics that are pretty unethical, where you don't have anybody clinically trained overseeing the process, potentially boundaries being violated. So that thought just came to my mind. So if anybody wants to further research this, what do they need to watch out for?
Well, I would say first, there's there's so many communities out there that you should reach out to people who have already been to the places that you want to go, and probably even more than one uh, per place. If you wanted to make a checklist of places that maybe looked good on your Google search. And then, yeah, looking at the background of these people, how long has their establishment been running? Um, the reviews, always a good idea. And yeah, looking at that staff to guest ratio, um, I have heard as well, and it's daunting to hear, but I have heard of places doing 90 plus guests at an ayahuasca retreat with less than double digit staff members. Um, so that is, mathematically, it wouldn't be possible to manage that if you get the wrong roll of dice there. So there's things like that that you could look for. But primarily, we're looking at talking to people who have been before, uh, their reputation, how long has an establishment been around, and the background of the staff there.
I assume they could consult with you about some of those things too. Maybe not, I don't know if you have specific recommendations, but at least to answer questions or kind of, continue the conversation about what would be helpful in a retreat center.
Yeah, I'm networked decently well. So if somebody needs some recommendations for a retreat center, I'm happy to offer that to the best of my ability. Um, but then also giving somebody these things to look for, maybe connecting them with a community of people that are sort of a stepping stone to communicating with people who have been to these establishments.
So when I hear you talk about this, I hear if somebody's considering this, first of all, make sure that you do research on where you're going, and the place that's facilitating it, just to make sure that the people that they're doing a good job, that they've got adequate staffing, and that other people have had positive experiences there. And then when you do your sort of own self-assessment, I hear you saying, really, if you're going to do this, you need to have been doing your own work already. You
Yep.
need to have sort of done some work to sort of be in touch with your own emotional experiences and being able to ground and keep yourself contained and sort of be aware, and have already started this process of what you're trying to address, that you're not walking into this cold without any work in the past. That this is a facilitator of a journey that you've already begun. This isn't the magic bullet to fix something that you haven't looked at before.
Yeah, and not to take away from people who may not be able to afford mental health services or are really misguided in that way. There is a way to slowly tread into this world, of course, but all in all, yes. If somebody reads the headline on the news of 10 years of therapy in 4 hours, the person should be aware of what 10 years of therapy in 4 hours would feel like, right?
Hmm.
And to not take that lightly.
I'd like to shift gears if that's okay. You mentioned the John Hopkins study, and I'm been just curious about research and kind of legalities of this to this point. Like I know as of the date that we're recording this, the FDA just recently did not approve MDMA for use with PTSD. So I'm just curious what the current psilocybin research is right now. If is there, I don't know the ongoing studies right now, but are there studies on psilocybin that are being done right now?
Yeah, Johns Hopkins is still doing great work. It moves around so fast that I almost don't want to point at too many because maybe they're not doing it anymore and some university has started a 2-year project. It seems to be really bouncing around a lot, with Johns Hopkins really being the only consistent university doing studies that I'm aware of, at least. Um, but as far as the legality, there's a few states in the US that are decriminalized. From what I understand, that doesn't mean much in terms of people actually getting fully sanctioned therapeutic support with these medicines. Um, but there are countries that are open, and once you start digging around, you'll find that there's many places that are operating very successfully outside of the US with this model.
So why are we so far behind?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a big conversation around the pharmaceutical industry, but to be honest, I think that's most of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was my fear or concern as well, potentially. You think that there's just, yeah, anyway, there's probably a bigger conversation to be had there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's I really can't fathom the idea that they still aren't seeing that this is they know it's effective. And by they I mean the the federal government, right? With all these states decriminalizing it, there's people that are trying to get this normalized. Maps has been doing great work for years. Um, so I don't think it's a matter of denying the efficacy anymore. So it's your best guess after that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot there, but I mean, I appreciate you going there because I feel like there's so much. I've just been hearing it anecdotally and kind of seeing results, and it seems like, and again, I'm just thinking specifically MDMA, but I can imagine with these other treatments that are really effective. Have some really big name
Yeah.
people and traumatologists in our field that have kind of come behind it. So I hope this becomes more accessible for more folks because it
Uh,
seems really powerful.
is it okay if I ask you what you've seen in terms of benefits with people?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I have some clients who have microdosed. So I haven't had anyone do a retreat. I have people do ayahuasca retreats. No one that I know that current client's done a psilocybin retreat, but what they've done, it feels like the advances that they make, the kind of, you know, I don't know, like it seems to solidify and stay stable, like the gains that they make for a long period of time. So sometimes it's, we do a regular treatment and life happens and we kind of go back to the old neural pathways or the old patterns. But it seems like when people have done these experiences, the effects are lasting, which is pretty remarkable. Or I feel like, I get to a certain point with some of the modalities I have, and I reach some threshold, right? There's some parts that are kind of protective from going further. And it feels like when they've used other, these other treatments, like it just sort of opens up some of the kind of protective mechanisms that we can develop to kind of keep us from going to the trauma seem to sort of settle down a bit, so that they can actually process the trauma in a new way, and it's not so threatening, and then they can actually heal in a newer, more powerful way. And I don't know if I have the words quite, but I've just sort of seen it just open up doors and make things more long lasting and effective.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for answering that. Yeah, there's a phrase that a lot of us in this work say, that you have to feel it to heal it.
Thank you all for joining us today. And thanks, Dan, for being with us and giving us a download on psilocybin and how it works and the benefits of it, and also some precautions around it. If you liked this episode, please follow us or like us or share the episode. And if you have any questions or topics that you would like us to cover, you can email us at conversations@sar@gmail.com. Did I get that right, Tim? There we go. There we go. And so until the next time, again, Dan, do you have a name for your book? You had mentioned earlier that you're writing a book.
How do people find you?
Yeah, is it near publication or?
It's getting close, and it seems that I get pretty close. The finish line moves further away. So yeah.
Wendy and I know how that is.
Yeah, we've all written books. We know what that's like.
Yeah, so I don't even have a title yet, but if you find the Bluefoot Show on Spotify, DannyBluefoot.com, and Danny Bluefoot on Instagram, all three of those things you can see when the book comes out. And yeah, but for now, I've just been working on the podcast and doing as much of the book as I can when I have the time.
Okay, and that's how they can find you if they want to consult as well.
Yeah, all of the information is on all three of those platforms, as well as a lovely episode on my podcast with Wendy.
There we go. Okay, sounds good. So until next time, thank you all.
Thanks.